Hello potential viewers, welcome to my channel. Here is a test for you on whether you have spent too much time online or on the dumpster fire that is political Twitter. Have you heard of the phrase Normalize Dating Sex Workers? Yeah, for those of you who have heard of it, this seemed to come out of nowhere. Now, maybe you have not heard of this phrase, then what about this one? Normalize dating trans people. And just in case you didn't know, there was a wave of progressive talking points that tried to push this narrative that straight folks, especially straight men, should treat dating straight and cisgender women the same as dating trans women. Okay, you can see examples of what I'm trying to get at. Examples of a particular narrative pushing involving behaviors in the dating market, typically by those who are heavily involved in the social justice side of the culture wars. Now, I'm not trying to make a mockery and look at these wacko social justice warriors, the focus of this video. That is fun and all, but there are so many senpais in this market, and I just simply can't add anything new to the mockery. So what I am going to do is to do a small and quick analysis of this kind of normalized narrative pushing. What is the ask of this kind of narrative push? And is the ask reasonable enough for a healthy society to consider? First of all, is the recognition of this fact of the modern age and our era of the internet, that the definition of sex work and its workers has been greatly expanded. When you think of traditional sex work, you would think direct prostitution, selling one's body and a sexual experience with said body for a price, and depending on your age, possibly the work of being an actor, having sex on camera with other actors and selling an erotic cinematic experience in the traditional pornographic industry. And nowadays, new additions to sex work are made possible by innovation and enhancement of technology, OnlyFans being an obvious example, and different kinds of not safe for work streaming platforms being some other. So, when it comes to dating sex workers, the pool of people we are talking about has become much bigger than just a few years back. Technology has made direct creator-to-consumer content delivery and payment solicitation possible, which basically has made the business model of distributed, individual content creator-driven, and modern online platform-based sex work the up-and-coming business model, not that unlike what Uber and Lyft did to this taxi industry. And combined with this pandemic and the lockdown situation we have right now, the loneliness of people, especially single men, the rapid rise of the market for this kind of business model should surprise no one. And here is the thing about social stigma. Whether one or more subgroup of the society agree with it or like it or not, when more people are quote-unquote crossing the line into the stigmatized group, the power of the stigma will become more and more diminished. The power of stigma also becomes weakened and even in some cases catalyst that in a way unify and promotes the stigmatized behavior, if the ones engaging in it become communities and form support systems. And this has become gradually the case with the community of sex workers. You can sort of see it in the backlash against Bella Thorne allegedly taking advantage of the OnlyFans platform and the unification of the online sex workers against this kind of behavior. The specificity of the phrase normalize dating sex workers aside, I would say that probably to the dismay of social conservatives, that sex work has become normalized to a level that we have never seen before. I am not going to pass too much judgment on this kind of normalization since I am not really a social conservative, and I still have yet to form any sort of strong opinion on any individual's capitalistic behavior. However, the push of the narrative to normalize dating sex workers is pretty far from purely a social ask. It is an ask of almost each individual of the society on a matter that is immensely personal. If this kind of social ask sounds invasive, that is because it is. Dating and the choice of either include or exclude people from one's pool of potential partners is as personal as it gets. And asking people to quote-unquote normalize dating some group is not just about whether you become tolerant, accepting, or friendly to a certain group. It is also about each of you tailoring your standards of romantic relationship to conform to an external standard. But before we move on to the critique of the obvious hubris and conceit behind this kind of ask, we can try to dive into some of the intricacies of the mentality of people who are not willing to or at least reluctant to date sex workers. First of all is the very obvious factor of insecurities and fears of comparison. This part, though generally more present on men, is true for both men and women. It is similar to the notion of how many exes people are willing to tolerate and accept from their potential partners. Sexual and emotional engagements have an inherently competitive side, and past experiences means points of references one's performance and behavior in a romantic relationship can be compared to. And what is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, source of insecurities from a man's perspective? Their performance in the bedroom. And dating a sex worker means many points of reference one can be compared to, so no wonder typically men are more reluctant to date sex workers. If you listen to the podcast show The Portal from Eric Weinstein with a porn actress Riley Reid, Eric made a really astute observation on the social jabs and mockery on the men who are in relationships with sex workers, that it is an assault on the core aspects of masculinity. Second is the fact that romantic relationships have an inherently possessive side. This should not be a strange idea for anyone. Romance is not just about hearts and sparkles. It is also about companionship and a certain level of exclusivity. Dating a sex worker, in many ways, begins with losing some of those exclusivity. The exclusivity of the parts of one's body, the exclusivity of physical interaction, the exclusivity of intimate and sexual and flirtatious interactions, and the exclusivity of seeing one's particular side of personality, to name a few. And speaking of intimacy, this is the third reason people tend not to date sex workers, a lack of some crucial intimacy. Intimacy is closely related to exclusivity. One could almost say that it is largely built on it. If you treat your significant other the same way you treat your normal acquaintances, your relationship with your significant other will not be special. And if you spend as much time with your normal acquaintances, or you share the same information with the normal acquaintances as with your significant other, your relationship with your significant other will not be special. So, if your partner exposes parts of their sexual side with normal acquaintances and even strangers on the internet, for a price no less, you need to deal with those loss of intimacy on that front. I'm not going to address all of the arguments behind this ask and narrative of our society should normalize dating sex workers. Instead, I would like to address one of its core premises. The premise that a person's inherent nature, or core value, or soul, or whatever you call it, is detached from the jobs they have or the activities they engage in. This is not a valid premise for a moral argument, for it has no standing in reality. It is an idealized version of the world, arguably something that is desirable, but it could not serve as a premise. The fact is, the job we have and the activities that we engage in have a lot to do with who we are as individuals. They may be negative or positive that do impact our personalities. For example, the basics. How you choose your job at least indicates what your personal interests are, what kind of activities you find enjoyable or at least tolerable, and some of your strengths and weaknesses. Even if someone is stuck at a position that is not ideal for their hopes and dreams, it still gives you a tell on what they can do with some of their skills and resources, and what their social skills and comfortable social situations are. So, the arguments of it's just a job, and someone's a sex worker but they make perfect partners, etc., are reliant on a sort of romantic intellectual sleight of hand. Yes, it is possible that a person's personality is not similar to what is commonly associated with their job. But for most of the people in the world, a person and their job make each other, and the marks a job or a profession leaves on a person can manifest in multiple ways. Also, in the particular case of sex work, in the modern and Western context, it is not a kind of career that one gets forced into and gets stuck in. Of course, I am referring to legal and consensual sex work, and not about illegal and coercion-based scenario, including gang-affiliated sex slavery and human trafficking, just clarifying for the stupid people out there. Voluntary sex work shows at least some part of a person's personality, how they view sex, how they view the intimacy and exclusivity of their potential relationships, and how they will make the trade-off between some of those aspects in relationships and the monetary gains. And one person could get over those. Yes, it is possible. Like in the adult movie industry, the actors and actresses usually find partners in their circle where people are used to the lifestyle and the trade-off. There are also people who do not share the same vision of love, intimacy, and other core aspects of a relationship and could form a relationship with these aspects in mind. But still, the fact of the matter is that most people do not share this kind of mentality and vision, and asking that people who do not share them to accept it is in itself pretty presumptuous and yes, conceitful. And the ironic thing about it is that men seem to be more vocal about their rejection of the notion of dating sex workers. Yet men are the main consumers of sex workers' products. People's choices are full of contradictions. Yet another quick point on this kind of social ask is that the ask should have some positives for the parties that are being asked to change. For example, the traditional wife is better crowd like to say that women who embrace their traditional wife instincts are happier and have a better family life and life satisfaction rate. But yet, what does this Normalize Dating Sex Workers ask offers as positives? Besides a badge of wokeness seems like nothing. I can already see a lot of the friendly posts from people that promote this narrative, that men who are not willing to date sex workers are just insecure, they are afraid they are not able to please their partners. Well, yes, you identify one of men's insecurities and decided to attack them on it. I'm so sure you are great at communication. That will be all for my video today. Hope you like it and I hope to see you next time.